I don't know if you noticed, but the world's going pretty crazy this week. Lots is going on. Thank you.
Can you switch it up from here?
Oh, can it go up from here? Yeah. Okay. You guys ready? So a lot has been going on this week, especially the fact that almost every leader of almost every country, or second under that, not the actual leader, but a representative of almost every country in the world has been in Jerusalem this past week. So that's a very, very intense and meaningful, but also somewhat sad, because the whole idea was to commemorate or to remember what happened in Auschwitz, but it's also to speak about the anti-Semitism that's going on, because this past year has been kind of crazy. And so there is something to speak about when it comes to anti-Semitism. That's why tonight I want to speak about that, and I want to bring some real responses and some ideas, at least from a religious perspective. Sometimes it's painful, but I think when you look at it from a religious perspective, it's actually, you can actually get some depth from it, some meaning and some lessons and some empowerment from it. Okay? As opposed to what happens normally is, yeah, you know, when I was a kid, someone threw a stone at me and said, "Hey, Jew," and someone else spat at me, and then the other guy, you know, that's how it normally happens. It's like there's this conversation of anti-Semitism. Yeah, you know, I went through this and this one went. So there's a way that we can actually look at what happened in the past and say, okay, is there a deeper message? Is there something deeper that's there? So that's what I want to do today. So before I even start with that, I want to, because I know that this is on video, and there's a lot of people out there who are ignorant, and they are haters, and they don't know who the Jewish people are enough, because we have a large history. We have a huge amount of history and wisdom, and there's people that don't know. So for those that don't know and they still have this resentment, I say to them, remember this one thing. Whether you believe in Judaism or not, or you believe in the message of the Torah or the Jewish people or not, I have a message for you. That every single country that accepted the Jewish people, not only did they succeed, they became the superpower of its time. And we can look throughout history. You've got, from the time of the people in Egypt, right? Who was there? Joseph. Some guy that was thrown in a pit, right? And then went into Egypt. And what happened to Egypt? They became the world's superpower. They brought wisdom to the world. It was the place to be. And what did they do? They threw out the Jews. What happened to Egypt? They got destroyed as well. There's a promise. And it's written in Genesis chapter 12, whether you believe this or not. But right now we're at the end of history. We're not at the beginning of history when that promise came. We could see all the past. And if you look at the past, it's clear. Those that tried to bless, this is the prophecy. Abram was told, those that bless you will be blessed, and those that curse you will be cursed. And has that happened? Oh my. Those that blessed us were blessed, and those that cursed us eventually were cursed. 1492, the Spanish Inquisition, they threw us out of Spain. Boom. Immediately that country went into failure. And you look throughout history, look at Egypt, destroyed. Babylon, Romans, are they still around? Well, they didn't last very long after they destroyed the temple. And you go for the Greeks. They tried to destroy us. We start eating. And they stopped existing. And they don't exist anymore. It's insane. And every single country that we've seen till now that has been good to us, has been blessed financially, has been blessed in all areas. They don't see it sometimes. But this is the prophecy. It's clear. Those that bless you will be blessed. Those that curse you will be cursed. And we're at the end of times. We've got the Greeks, the Babylonians, we've got the Persians, we've got every single empire. It's insane. In Europe, every time they threw us out, bada boom, they lost it. So for the person that's listening out there, I want to tell you, and for everyone that's here, those that blessed us were blessed, and those that cursed us were cursed. This is not a prophecy anymore. This is a reality. right? History, if it repeats itself that many times, this is not history. This is a reality. So if they want to keep blessing, they will be blessed. And the countries that do it, look at America today. They accepted us and they brought us in. And America today is a very successful country. And for now, that's how it is. And I hope that that's how it continues. And you can look around the world, it's been like that for very long. So that's my very first thing. But I really want to delve into why is it happening? Okay? So whenever you look at something, most times there's very common excuses that people give for their anti-Semitism. Okay? And I want to give you a list of some of the excuses, the most common that historians have used, and tell you that all of those are excuses. They're not really the right reason for why they hate the Jews. Okay? So for instance, if a kid comes late to school and he says when he gets into school, he gets to class, the teacher says, why did he come late? He says, well, my parents don't take me to school. I take the bus. Oh, you take the bus. And every day I take the bus, so that's why I'm late. How would we dispute that argument in 1 minute?
Take an earlier bus.
Well, you could tell them that, but what happens if somebody else in the classroom says, hey, I also come by bus every day? The minute that you disprove the argument by saying, hey, someone else could do the same thing and they're always on time, then we realize it's just an excuse, okay? So in Judaism, there's been many excuses. Here's one of them, the very famous one. We claim that we are chosen. How would you answer that?
So we assimilated.
So do the other religions.
We assimilate. So does everybody else. Doesn't anyone? Can you imagine going to someone from Italy? Hey, you're Italian, right? So do you think Italians are the best? Oh, of course, I'm the best. Really? You think you're the best? I mean, what do you think he's going to tell you? He's the worst? Every single nation, every single country, everyone that existed till today, and every culture, every belief system says that I am chosen. It's an excuse because everyone has made that claim. Christianity doesn't say that if you don't believe, right? And doesn't Islam say the same thing? And what about the countries? Let's go around from country to country. America doesn't think they're the best, and the French don't think they're good with wine, and the Italians don't think they're good with their pasta. And we can keep going. The British with their fish and chips, and the Jews with their gefilte fish. Yeah. So what is it that we? First of all, everyone thinks they're chosen. So that's an excuse because everyone thinks that. The second thing is, do we actually try and make people Jewish? No. Do we allow people to convert? Yeah. So what kind of chosenness is that? If anyone could just convert to us. We're not this race where we say no one can come and join. If anyone wants to convert and they're legitimate about it, then they can convert and they'll be 100% Jewish. That's it. You can convert. So don't tell me that we don't accept conversions. We do. And we don't proselytize either. So when it comes to the argument that we think that we're the chosen people, everyone thinks that they're chosen people, and that's not an argument to say that we should be hated. Okay? Question. That's the first disproof. The second one is economics. Either we're too wealthy and we take over the country, or we're too influential over the country. Well, I've got news for you. That's only recent that we've been very wealthy. You know, throughout history, we had to survive on the minimum. Have you heard of a Jewish ghetto? Right? Well, Jewish ghettos always happened. You know why? Because we couldn't do business with anyone else. We had to survive amongst ourselves. We had to live amongst ourselves. We couldn't live as regular commoners of the people of those countries that we lived in. So we were poor. We were in the poorest of situations during the 17th century and the 20th century, whether it was in Poland or Russia. And yet still there was pogrom after pogrom. So that's an excuse, right? Because there was times where we were poor and they hated us as well. And when we were wealthy, that was a very small... And anyway, that's good. If there's more wealth in your country, isn't that a good thing? Right? If you bring money to a country, is that good or not good? I don't understand. Do you want... If there's a market and there's money flowing in, and people are making good money that's a good thing. That means there's more taxes. How else do you want the money? You want to steal it? I mean, if they're making money and taxes are being paid, so then that's a good thing. So there goes another thing. Economics. That's a bad argument because there were times when we were poor and yet still Jews felt a tremendous amount of anti-Semitism. Next, some say we were outsiders. We're different. Well, have you ever heard of Amish people? Right? They're different. There's many people that are different. There's people that are different everywhere. Okay, so they were hated, but not to the extent that we were. In the 18th century, do you know what happened? There was the Enlightenment period. And do you know what happened then? That was literally all about assimilating and being part of the culture of the world that we lived in, of the country that we lived in. Did it help? When we assimilated? What happened after we assimilated in the Spanish Inquisition? Do you know what the Spanish Inquisition was? So what does Inquisition mean?
Questioning, like
to inquire, right? That's what it is. It's the inquiry. What were they inquiring? 1492, they threw the Jews out. All the Jews got expelled. They had something to do. What was it? Do you know what it was?
Was it just conversion to Christianity?
Well, yeah, anyone who stayed had to have converted to Christianity. And many Jews converted to Christianity. But then came the biggest massacre of all. And that was after the Jews were expelled. The Jews that ran out survived. It was the ones that stayed that went through tremendous amounts of torture and pain. Why? Because they converted and they started saying, hey, they're the Moranos, they're the pigs. So you need to explain, maybe you didn't convert properly. And thousands of Jews, thinking that if they convert, it would be easier, would survive, they didn't. So that didn't help. Assimilating didn't always help either. So don't say that it's because we're an outsider. Does anyone know how far Hitler looked back to see how you were Jewish, how Jewish you were?
Great-grandfather.
Right? Is it only one grandfather? I think it's what, great-grandfather even?
Maybe.
What I heard was one grandparent. If one grandparent was Jewish, that's it. So that's not very easy. I mean, that's a lot of assimilation there. There's 3 grandparents that aren't Jewish. One is. That was enough. So assimilating didn't necessarily help for anti-Semitism. Just because you were an outsider, that's just an excuse. You're an outsider. Okay? The next thing, scapegoat. This is another one that they say. It's a scapegoat. They've got someone to take their scapegoat. You know, there's things are going wrong in that culture. And they had well, first of all, there were times where we were doing very well. Like in Spain. And they didn't like the Jews. That wasn't a scapegoat. The things were going well, actually. The country was doing extreme. In Egypt, they were doing pretty well. They were the wealthiest country of the world. That wasn't a scapegoat. It was like, oh, let's stop them before they come too many. Okay, so there's scapegoat doesn't help because that's not on. Another thing is it's not the root cause. A scapegoat isn't the root of the reason. That's an excuse for your reason of doing what you're doing, but that's not the root of it. So making that claim that I'm taking out my hatred on something that's different is not an excuse, because there were many people that were different, and why were you doing it to the same people all the time everywhere? It doesn't make sense. Okay, and today we have Israel as the excuse, and what's the answer to that? You don't really care about the Palestinians because there's many that live in Syria. You don't care about the Palestinians that live in Jordan. You only care about destroying Israel. That's really your focus, okay? And it's an excuse. Why does every Jew that live around the world have to explain for what's happening in Israel whenever there's a terrorist attack in Israel or something that's happening in Israel? They come to Jews and say, hey, they terrorized me, and then you're asking me why we did things to you? I don't understand. They said, I was on a campus. I told you this story. I was on a campus on university. Someone came up to me and said, hey, can you tell me why the Jews are killing Palestinian children? And I'm like, excuse me? Do you even know me? Do you know who I am, where I'm from? I mean, what gives you the reason to just come up to any Jew and say, hey, can you explain to me what's going on in Israel? What gives you the right? Imagine me going to somebody who's Arab, who's Muslim, and say, can you explain to me what's going on in Syria? Can you explain to me what's going on with ISIS? Who gives you the right to just come up to a random Jew just because of my kippah, right? That you need me to explain what's going on. Why do I need to be? That in itself is an excuse. That's not the reason. It's an excuse. So here goes a bunch of reasons that many have claimed, and they are all excuses. And the reason it's an excuse is because there's other things that they're using that we've seen that in the same consistency, right? They didn't say anything. When we saw other outsiders, it wasn't the same. When we were poor, you also hated us. When we were wealthy, you hated us. When we were chosen, when you think we're chosen, then you hated us. When we're not chosen, because you don't want us, you think we're dirt anyway, so you also hated us. And there's also everyone else thinks they're chosen. So there's no consistency in these claims. They're all excuses. So what I want to really do is come and give you a spiritual perspective to the whole idea. And it's if you look at it outside of a spiritual perspective, it's not logical. It doesn't make sense. Whatever you come up with will never satisfy people. And that's why, by the way, one of the greatest anti-Semitic quotes is that a Jew can always tell you, they can always tell you how they were hated, but they can never tell you why. Have you ever heard this statement? It's a very anti-Semitic trope. It's a Jew can always tell you how, they'll complain about how they were treated, but they'll never tell you why. It's meaning there's a good reason why. Listen, someone once told me, yeah, but think about it. Over 100 countries, and the Jews have been all those countries that they've been in, they've been treated badly. Maybe there's something wrong with the Jews. So someone told me. I said, well, throughout history, there's been something called infanticide, which was a normal thing. You know that? In fact, killing little babies as soon as they're born and saying, oh, I don't want a girl, I want a boy. This is a brand new girl. I don't want that. They just throw it, dispose of it, and they say that's a completely normal thing. That was normal throughout our history. Throughout most of humanity, that was a normal thing to do. So, since it was normal throughout history, does that make it okay? Just because, humanity has been very wrong throughout history. Monarchies and, all sorts of things. It's still going on right now, but it was way worse in the past. Just because it was wrong consistently throughout history, does that mean it's okay? That means it's okay? No. We've done things which are very bad in the past. Doesn't mean it's now okay. I'm talking about humanity as a whole. And the other thing is 109 or whatever it is they claim, certain amount of countries have, I asked them, they've thrown out the Jews, so maybe there's a problem with the Jews. I asked them like this. Listen, if there's a bully in a classroom and everyone's bullying this one kid who's quiet, he's a quiet kid, and everyone's bullying that kid, do you say to everyone, hey, there must be something wrong with this kid because everyone in that bus, everyone, every day is chasing after that kid and bullying him. Is that good? Is that good education or not? Well, everyone on the bus is bullying the same kid. There must be something wrong with the kid. So what does the teacher do? Bullies the kid as well, right? Get the principal, let's bully the kid more. Everyone bully, because everyone's bullying him anyway. There must be something wrong with the kid. Let's bully him more. Let's get the police on him. Right? Does that make sense? It makes no sense at all. That is the most ridiculous claim of all. And there's many more. I don't have time to go on and on and on with the claims, but they don't end. And it's really, really sad because they're still going on as we speak. Okay, so I had someone come up to me. I want to know your opinion. So once we had a survivor, we had a talk about the Holocaust, and someone came when we were at University of Oregon, someone spoke. And at the end of the class, someone came up to me and said, Rabbi, I didn't want to say this loud, but I have a question. I said, sure, take it away. So he says to me, I think we're overly obsessed with anti-Semitism and Holocaust and all what we've been through. Why are we even talking about this? It makes me mad. Why can't we just give up and just move on? We're overly obsessed with the hatred of the past. Why are we so obsessed? So what would you tell such a person? Would you say, it's true? Would you do that? Or would you actually say something else? Would you respond with no? What would you say?
There's some validity there. There's some validity, and you can't be a victim forever.
You can't, it's true. We're not meant to be victims. And are we? After the Holocaust, are we victims?
No.
I'll prove it to you we're not. Because look what we've achieved. People with just alone, right? There's a Holocaust survivor around the corner from here. He's lost everything, rebuilt his whole family on his own. He still goes around the world speaking, but he's not a victim because he's not a victim of them because he's still living at the fullest extent. And that's very, very hard for us to understand. But he's definitely not forgetting about it. But he's definitely not having that victimhood mentality where he's just staying in his hut and he's complaining and he's saying that people should give me stuff. And he's making an effort. He's literally amazing. Right? And there's not just one person. There's just one person I know around the corner. There are thousands of people like this. Okay? So we have to discuss and think of, first of all, is it something different by the Jews than all other hatreds that have been in the past? Okay? There's been many hatreds in the past, but do we have a legitimacy to even speaking about anti-Semitism in the first place? Why is this even a topic? Okay? Why is it even a topic? Are we okay? Are we allowed to even speak about this? Why is it even a topic? So here goes 5 different points that they've come and explained to prove that this is a very important topic that we need to speak about. Okay? And this is something why it's baffled historians as well as everybody else, right? That there's been the Turks against the Armenians, the Rwanda genocide, the Hutus against the Tutsis, and there's been non-stop hatred around the world. But for some reason, anti-Semitism is different. And let me tell you why. Okay? 4 reasons why anti-Semitism is different. Reason number 1 is because of the universality of it. It's happening not just in one place. It happened in Europe. It happened in France. It happened with all types of people. It happened with the pagans. It happened with the Christians. It happens with the Muslims. All over the world, wherever we went. So there's the universality of it, and that needs to be understood. How come that was so universal? Okay? During the Enlightenment period, there was Voltaire, who was an anti-Semite. It came from the communists, who were the extreme left. And you had the Nazis that were extreme right? They were anti-Semitic, very anti-Semitic, okay? And you had Henry Ford. Does anyone know about Henry Ford? Yep. Right? Was he anti-Semitic? Very. He had a newspaper that he would literally just promote anti-Semitism. And what was he? He was like a capitalist. He was somewhat in the middle, and yet he promoted anti-Semitism. So you have the universality throughout history of hatred towards Judaism. Look at this, okay? I'm sorry, this is kind of depressing, but look at this. Let me just read the longevity. Okay, so rule number 1 was universality. Number 2, longevity. Look how long it's been going. It's been going since we've existed. Ever since we came a people, it's been going on. Okay, listen to this. Let me just go to the 10th century, okay? Let's go down. 15th century. It just doesn't end. 13th, it will take me hours. Okay, 1240 in England. There was the book burning. 1240 in Spain. Whilst that was happening, in Spain, forced conversion. 1242 in Paris. 1244, Oxford. 1255, England. Right? Mob attacks. Blood libels. And it doesn't end. Let's just go to the 15th century, okay? Here you've got Prague, Krakow, Rome. Jews being burned alive in Austria in 1422 in Austria, 1424, 1426, 1431, southern Germany, 1432, Savory, 1438, Mainz, 1439, Augsburg, 1449 in Toledo. Okay, that was public torture and burnings. Do you want me to carry on? 1473, Andalusia, 1418, Venice, Sevilla. It doesn't end. Italy, Toledo, public executions. And it's just, I'm telling you, look at this. Right? You got this? It just doesn't, look at that. Every century.
Pittsburgh.
Yeah, Pittsburgh. It doesn't end. Let's go. Look at just it's insane. It's insane. You know, when they threw the Jews out in 1492, right? So they threw the Jews out of Spain. then they got thrown out of Lithuania and they got thrown out of Portugal. All the Jews ran from Spain to Portugal and they got thrown out of there. Straight. And it was right. So this is depressing. Did anyone feel that? Right. So the longevity of it, but it's not going to be depressing once I give you the answer to the whole thing. So the longevity of it is the second thing. It's been going on for so long. The intensity of it. Right? It was, did you know that there was a Wannsee conference that the Germans ran? Right? You heard about this Wannsee conference? And Eichler had a list. Eichmann had a list, and they literally had a list of where all the Jews lived, even in New Zealand. How many Jews lived in New Zealand, in Australia, where they lived, how many, exactly how many Jews were around. Excuse me? What do you care? I mean, why do you care where they live on the other side of the world? Right? But it was so intense that the hatred was not just in my place. I want them out everywhere. Haman wanted to wipe them out in all provinces of Persia and beyond, the 127 different countries. So there's an intensity of the hatred as well, which is something that needs to be explained. And finally, it's irrational. Okay, you ever heard of the blood libels? Do you know what the blood libels are? Mm-hmm. What's the blood libels, right? We took the blood. This is the claim that was made, and thousands. This sounds hilarious, right? Look, listen to how irrational is this, right? We killed the Lord Jesus, right? Is he the God? Is he God? No. What? Yeah, according to Christianity, he's God. So how can we kill God unless he wanted us to kill him? And if he did, in order for you to be atoned for your sins, so shouldn't you thank me for that? I mean, I don't understand what the logic is. So it's completely irrational. It's completely irrational. But because it sounds silly. Look, listen to this. The Black Plague. Do you know what they said in the Black Plague?
We poisoned the wells.
We poisoned the wells. And everyone died because we drank from those wells. And thousands of people died from the plague because we drank from... It's irrational. We put blood in our matzah. That's the actual blood libel. Do you know what they also have? They have this in the churches. They used to have this wine, and they had this wafer, and they used to say that the wine is the blood of Jesus that atones for our sins, and the wafer is his body. And they made claims that they caught Jews poking holes in the wafer, and they were hurting the body of Jesus, and therefore thousands of Jews were killed because of that. Can you imagine? Because we were poking holes in their wafer? I mean, this is ridiculous. This is irrational. So throughout history, the claims that they rejected science and physics. The Nazis rejected physicians, Jewish physicians, and different. There was a polio, the one that made the polio vaccine, right, which saved thousands of people. But that vaccine was made by a Jew, and it was rejected by many people because it was a Jew that made it. Can you imagine? That's a dangerous disease. Saved hundreds of thousands of people. Yet they rejected that vaccine because they said the Jew made it. Can you imagine? So it's irrational. They're hurting themselves. It's irrational to have BDS, which says, I'm pro-Palestinian, so therefore stop the Jews from doing business with the Palestinians. So let's boycott Israeli businesses which employ Palestinians, so that way less Palestinians will have money. Oh, that makes no sense. That's ridiculous. That's irrational. So here is the big problem. Number one is it's universal, the longevity of it, the intensity of it, and the irrational aspect of it. Okay, so let me just read to you some quotes and then give you an answer to the entire thing. Okay, here's the quotes. We all know Mark Twain's quotes, right? His letter that he wrote concerning the Jews. You heard of his letter concerning the Jews? Fascinating. He writes like this. The Egyptian, the Babylonian, and the Persians rose. They filled the planet with sound and splendor. Then they faded to dream stuff and passed away. The Greeks and the Romans followed and made a vast noise, and they are gone. Other peoples have sprung up and held their torch high for a time, but it burned out, and they sit in twilight now, or have vanished. The Jews saw them all, beat them all, and is now what he always was, exhibiting no decadence, no infirmities of age, no weakening of his parts, no slowing of his energies, no dulling of his alert and aggressive mind. All things are mortal but the Jew. All other forces pass, but he remains And what is the secret of his immortality? So there must be something that we can't understand, which is why we're still here. What is our secret? Listen to the Leo Tolstoy, who lived in Russia, and he was a Jew, and look what he wrote. Amazing writer. A Jew is a symbol of eternity. The nation which neither slaughter nor torture could exterminate, which neither fire nor sword of civilizations were able to erase from the face of the earth. The nation which first proclaimed the word of the Lord, the nation which preserved the prophecy for so long and passed it on to the rest of humanity. Such a nation cannot vanish. A Jew is eternal. He's an embodiment of eternity. Now listen to this Rabbi Yaakov Emden. Are you ready for this? Listen to this. Many have tried to injure us, but they were not able to destroy or wipe us out. While all the great ancient civilizations have disappeared and been forgotten, the nation of Israel who clings to God is alive today. What will the wise historian answer, listen to this, when he examines this phenomenon without prejudice? Was all this purely by chance? But my soul, when I contemplated these great wonders of a continued existence, they took on greater significance than all the miracles and wonders that God, blessed be He, performed for our fathers in Egypt. Our existence today is a bigger miracle than all our past miracles that happened to us even in Egypt, in the desert, and when they entered the land of Israel. And the longer this exile extends, the longer that we're here, and the Jews have been going through all of this, the miracle of Jewish existence becomes more obvious to make known God's mastery and supervision over nature and history. Could there be a bigger reason for why this is all happening than what the scientists and many historians have been trying to figure out? Because no one has got the right answer. Is there a deeper answer? Is there a plan? Is there something? Is there a prophecy that we would have known all along that this was going to happen? Is it possible that we knew that this was going to happen throughout our history? And do we know what's going to happen in the future? That's a scary thought, because, how can we know? Can anyone here know what's going to happen tomorrow? Can you know what's going to happen next week? Can you know what's going to happen in a year? No one can know. But for some reason, if I was going to write a book, right, and I want you to believe in it, and I was going to write a book called My Torah, called Jacob Malol's Torah, and I want you all to believe in my Torah, would I say in it, next year from this day, right, at this time, there's going to be a great snowstorm? Probably. You know why? What time of the year is it? Well, not in LA, but if I said in New York, there's going to be a great snowstorm, and it's going to be on this date today, right? Is it likely that it will happen?
Somewhere there could be a snowstorm.
There's a chance it's going to happen. So, okay, if I was writing a book, I would try and show how cool I am, and I'll say, this time next year, there's going to be a snowstorm, right? Believe in me. But if I was going to write a book, I will never write what's going to happen in hundreds of years and centuries, 500 years from now, which are completely insane and they don't make sense. The Jews will always exist, the Torah says, but we will always remain few in number. We will be dispersed around the world. Listen to the language of it. This is a prophecy that we always knew. Here is the language of the Torah, okay? This is in Deuteronomy chapter 4, verse 25, and this is the religious approach to anti-Semitism. I give witness to you today, the heavens and the earth, because you will leave this land which you are going into. You're going to be careful. Moses is telling the Jews, be careful, you're going into Israel, but you're going to leave this land, and you're not going to stay there too long, because there will be great destruction. And God's going to spread you amongst all the nations of the world, and you will remain few in number. By the way, during the times of the Romans, how many Jews were there? Does anyone know? And they say there was around 3 million Jews around the times of the Romans, okay, when they expelled the Jews from the temple. Okay, it's around 2,000 years ago. There was how many? 3 million Jews. Do you know how many people lived in China?
Billion.
No, 3 million. Same number of people lived in China as there were Jews at the times that around 2,000 years ago, how many Chinese are there today? Billions, right? How many Jews are there? How can you know that we're always going to remain few in number? That doesn't make sense. Okay? How do you know that we're going to be spread around the world? That doesn't make sense. Then it says, don't worry, at the end of days you will all return, and I will listen to your voices, and I will not destroy you. You will not be destroyed, even though there'll be hate. Right? If I was writing a book and I was saying this, would I say such a thing? You will be few in number? That's a risk. Right? Not only will you'll be dispersed around the world, and you will remain as a people, and you will not be destroyed. How can I say that? That's a risk, but yet everything has happened. It's really happened. Okay, listen to the next part. And then it says, do you remember the earlier days when, from the first day, right, which was when you were created as a nation, where from one side of the heavens to the other, there was this great event, right? Has there ever been a great nation that heard such a thing like this before? Where everyone heard and everyone saw? Has there ever been? It's talking about the national revelation of Mount Sinai. Because according to Judaism, it wasn't just one person hearing a story, right? If I was to tell you that, hey, I saw God and he came to me and he gave me a book and he says, hey, you should believe in this stuff, right? Is it likely that you'll listen to me? No. Is it likely for me to fabricate and make this up? Yeah. You know why? Because I could just say, I saw, this is my thing, right? I saw this, and yeah, look, if I come out of my bedroom and I say to my family, Mom, Dad, listen, God spoke to me last night and he gave me a book. Would my kids, would my family believe me? Right? As a kid, I came out of my bedroom, Mom, Dad, I had this revelation and God came to me and he gave me a book. Would my family believe me? No. Is it likely that I could do such a thing? Is it likely that a person will make up such a thing? Of course it would be. You know why? Because no one could disprove it. You'll just think I'm mad. You'll send me to get some help. But no one would really disprove it because no one's there to see that it didn't happen. So no one can really disprove it. But if I said that I was at the MetLife Stadium and in front of 100,000 people, a huge arm came out and said, I choose you to be my person, to carry my book. And I come home and I tell my mom and my dad and I tell everyone, hey guys, you know what? God said, I choose you. Would everyone believe me?
There's thousands of witnesses.
There was thousands of witnesses?
They're tweeting about it.
And they're not, no one's tweeting about it. And we were all watching it on TV and we didn't see anything. Will they still believe me?
No.
Right? How easy is it to make such a lie up?
Easy.
Is it? Well, will everyone listen to me? If I said I was in the middle of MetLife Stadium and there was a massive revelation, God came out and he pointed his finger and he said, I choose you.
That's more proof that it didn't happen because no one else witnessed it.
It's the greatest proof that it didn't happen. Sorry?
They would say, who else saw it?
They'll say, who else saw it? Who else was there? I mean, I was watching the game. Nothing happened. What are you talking about? Right? That's the greatest proof that I'm crazy. If I'm going to say that I saw God speaking to me in front of hundreds of... Well, Judaism is the only nation, period, that made a claim that we had a national revelation. That God didn't just speak to one person and say, here's a book, take it and, spread the message. It actually happened to an entire nation. So here goes a crazy thing. It says, hey, by the way, I give witness to you that you will be spread and you will be small in number, you will be spread amongst the nations. And remember that you were this people that got the entire Torah to an entire nation. What's that to do with it? Listen to what the Talmud says. Stay with me. I know it's late and it's tiring, but listen to do you know what the Talmud says? The Talmud says that Sinai has the same word as sin'ah, hatred. You notice it sounds the same? Sinai, Sinah. Hebrew for hatred is Sinah. Okay? And Sinai sounds the same. It's the same. Do you know what the Talmud says? From the moment that the Torah came down on Sinai, hatred came into the world. The world started hating the Jews. That was the moment the hatred came. From the moment that the Torah came down on Sinai. So we always knew that there will be hatred to the Jews. From the moment that it came down, why? Who could tell me why there is hatred to the Jews? Something to do with our Torah.
Chosen people.
Well, I said at the beginning that us saying that we're chosen isn't a proof to hatred. Do you know why?
They believe it too.
Because they believe that they're chosen as well. They in fact say, we are more chosen than you because God left you and chose us. Right? So they believe they are chosen.
Well, they were all originally Jews.
Who was?
People who aren't Jewish.
Everyone was from Adam, but not everyone was Jewish, no. There's many people, there's 7 billion people in the world. The Jews are only 0.2% of the, less than 1% of the world. You know, it's a very, very small number of people in the world that are actually Jewish. Do you hear, Mike? What is the reason that Torah we knew that Torah is going to cause a lot of hate? Do you know what it is?
People hate rules.
Well, there's many rules out there, and we don't instigate those rules on them. We don't go running around with the Talmud saying, hey, knocking on people's doors, say, hey, come study Talmud. I do it to Jews, but not to none, right? We don't proselytize with non-Jews, and we don't try and make non-Jews study Talmud. So what is it about us?
We're just the best. People are jealous.
Well, there is jealousy. That's definitely true. But listen to this, okay? Hitler said it best. He said, we gave 2 wounds to the body. We gave 2 wounds to humanity, the wound of the body and the wound of the soul. He said the wound of the body is circumcision. The wound of the soul is conscience. He said that when I walk around and I see a Jew, he's very different to what I stand for. I have certain values, and I don't like their values. It bothers me. Okay? When a person sees a Jew walking around and he's stuck with certain values and they're very different to the values of the culture that he lives in, what happens to the person that's watching? Either I hate the person because I say, how can you be so different to me? Right? But not just because you're different, because you're making me feel bad for who I am. You see, if there's a kid that's doing really well in school and is behaving really nicely in school, and there's another kid who's really naughty, right? How's the kid that's doing really well, what's he going to cause his brother, right? There's 2 brothers. There's going to be jealousy, and then what? Well, it could either be like this. There's 2 choices. Either the younger brother's going to say, you know what, I'll learn from him, or I hate him. Either I'm going to learn from him and start behaving, or I'm going to hate him because I don't like him being around. Every time he's around me, he gets all the attention. He's so well behaved. Every time he's around me, everything goes his way. He's a great kid. I don't like that kid. It makes me feel bad. He makes me look worse. So you either destroy your opposition or you learn from it. And that's what the world got when we came at Sinai. We got this system and this absolute truths that we stood with, and the world said, either I love it or I want to destroy it. And listen to this. The greater the opposing ideology that we lived in, the greater the hate they had towards us. Anti-Semitism, the level of anti-Semitism was always according to the level of ideology that was different to the way that we lived. Okay? If you think about it, Christianity, the Crusades, at the end of the day, they had similar values to us. They believed in monotheism. They believed in similar values. So because they believed in similar values, they had hatred, but it wasn't the same level as the Nazis. Then the Nazis' hatred was way higher. Do you know why? Because the ideology that the Nazis had was so different to the ideology that we had that they said, oh wow, this is something I really don't like. It's just so far apart from where we are living. The greater the opposing ideology of the society that we lived in, the more hatred they had towards us. Does that make sense? Okay, so here goes the question. And I'll finish off with this. Okay? What is the solution? We've been through so much hatred. And we have this thing called Judaism. And it's actually causing more hatred for some because they don't live the way that we live. And they don't like it because they say, oh, it doesn't make me feel good when I see a Jew around. So what's the solution? Should we assimilate more? Maybe the answer should be, let's all just assimilate and there'll be no more Jew hatred. Good answer? No. Elie Wiesel was once asked this question. Do you know what he said? He said, if somebody comes to me and is trying to kill me, should I just come out and say, hey, stop. Before you kill me, let me just shoot myself. I mean, does that make sense? So, there's been times where people said, okay, let's assimilate. But then what happened? Well, that happened, but you know what else happened? There's many, many people that assimilated, and we don't know them as Jews anymore. They've lost their Jewish identity. That's Jewish suicide. Do you want to do that? Well, that's not a good idea. So we're left with two things. The other solution is defense, and that's something which is very important. We need to defend ourselves against anti-Semitism. But the greatest solution and the greatest response to anti-Semitism, and this sounds crazy, is strengthening our own identity. Strengthening our values. Do you know why? Because if we strengthen our values, then it raises the values of the society we live in. And that is the ultimate answer. Strengthen yourself. You can't change the world, but you can change yourself. And if you change yourself, the people around you will also change. And by doing that, you will elevate the entire culture that you're living in. The ultimate aim for Judaism is that we will elevate ourselves to a point that we're really committed to our values, which will then ultimately elevate the values of the people around us. And then they will be more like us, and then they will not need to hate us. Okay? So here is finally, I just want to read something very interesting. Here's an amazing article that was written by William Aiken, and it was in 1973, I think, and he wrote something really interesting. There was a whole slogan going around saying, Jews go home, Jews go home. We don't need your oil. Okay? And he wrote an article like this, and it got very popular. He writes like this. This is one of the most beautiful, heartwarming quotes by a non-Jew that you would hear. Jews go home. Well, this is nothing new. Never in the past have you ever taken this gentle suggestion to move on. But heaven forbid, suppose just this once, you thought that expression of a few sick people actually expressed the conviction of all people in this wonderful land of ours. And of all of you started to pack, and if all of you started to pack your bags and leave for parts unknown, just before you leave, would you do me a favor? Would you leave me your formula for the Salk vaccine with me, that vaccine that I was talking about? You wouldn't be so heartless as to let my children contract polio? And please have pity on us. Show us the secret of how to develop such geniuses as Einstein and Steinmetz. And so many others who have helped us all. After all, we owe you the most, the atom bomb. Most of our rocket research, and perhaps the fact that we are alive today. Instead of looking from our chains and our graves to see an aging, happy Hitler drive slowly by in one of our Cadillacs, on your way out, Jews, do me just one more favor. Will you please drive by my house and pick me up too? I'm just not sure I could live too well in a land where you weren't around to give us as much as you have given us in the past. If you ever have to leave, love goes with you. Democracy goes with you. Everything I and my buddies fought for in World War II goes with you. God goes with you. Just pull up in front of my house, slow down and honk, because so help me, I am going with you too. And that was a quote from William Aiken from America, who in 1973 really nails it on the head. we've done some amazing things in this world. And just because we're doing great things, don't think that they have the right to take that away from us. Doing greatness in this world means that there will be an opposition. And it's us to literally live according to the standards that we've been given, the values that we've been given, and stick to them at our fullest ability that we can. Because if we do, we will elevate the values of the people around us and ultimately remove anti-Semitism, because that's the only way we can actually remove it. Strengthen our own values will strengthen the values of the people around us. Okay? So that's basically it. There's so much more to learn. You know, throughout history, by the way, all the cultures that we lived in, that we made successful, Egypt, right? They had lots of wisdom, but did they do good things with that wisdom? Right? The Golden Age, they had art and culture. And do you know what they did? They burnt our art. They burnt our Torah. In that Golden Age, whilst they loved culture and art, they burnt our art. And if you go throughout history, the Nazis, they had some values. They did. They valued animals. They loved their dogs, and veganism was a big part of their culture. They were actually very, very good in some ways, but yet some of them were PhDs and officers and very cultured and very, very. Do you know that in the Nuremberg trials, almost all of them were PhDs? You know that all of the greatest perpetrators of the Nazi warfare, of the Holocaust, were very educated people. Does educated people guarantee good morals? And the answer is no. It doesn't guarantee good morals. Culture, every culture that we've been to, hasn't guaranteed for us the greatest of morals. And that should be a very powerful lesson, that we have something which has really given us so much, and we must stay strong to it no matter, under all circumstances, no matter what happens. We must be strong and proud of who we are, and hopefully with that we will have a complete return and the bringing of Mashiach. Be'ezrat Hashem, bekarov, amen v'amen. Okay, thank you for listening. And
questions, comments, anyone?
Thoughts?
What
It
if,
is a heavy topic, honestly.
what if more women, Jewish women, married more non-Jewish men, and then their kids would be Jewish, and then we'd have more Jews?
It's a good question, but I'll ask you this question. If a person's father is not Jewish and his mother's Jewish, okay, how likely is it that the child's going to identify as a Jew? More likely or less likely?
Well, the mom has to be strong on that.
She has to be, but marrying a non-Jew, is that a Jewish act or not such a Jewish act? Right? So by actually marrying a non-Jew, you're already halfway to giving your child an identity which is not Jewish. Right? Because now his half of, forget what Judaism says, that if your mother's Jewish, your child's Jewish, right? Forget all that. Just logically. If your father's not Jewish and your mother's Jewish, there's not that as much of a likelihood for you to identify as Jewish unless your father and your mother is Jewish. Plus, there's many other issues that will come along the way. So that's not really a good practical response. We want to have a strong identity and to elevate ourselves spiritually more, so that way we can elevate the people around us more. Because that's the ultimate goal that Judaism wants. We don't tell people what to do, but we want ourselves to change in a way that we elevate ourselves.